In my career, I got to flourish, but there was only a handful of people who really, really helped me out throughout my entire career. And one of them is producer Ruben.
We know that story.
With Rick Dees. We know that story. So shout out to producer Ruben. But the other part of that is when I met Ron Shapiro, I don't know what it was, but he saw something in me and truly believed in me and gave me a shot. And it was almost a job I thought would never happen. It was too good to be true. It was too big for me. Mm-hmm. But somehow Ron saw something in me and he brought me on board. I got my first paycheck. And years later, we're really good friends. And I want to say hi and I want to give a round of applause for Ron Shapiro.
Yay.
Oh, thank you. Do you remember what you spent that first check on?
You know, it was probably McDonald's down the street. It was the only thing that was open that late at night. Yeah. But Ron, you've had the most extensive career in radio, but we're fresh off of Spotify.
Yeah.
What'd you think of Spotify? What was your experience?
You know what? I loved it. Like, I have no animosity that I'm not there. I'm kind of, even though I've got a great job now, and I'm loving it, and it's starting from the ground up again, another startup, and that's exciting, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit.
Sure.
But like with the radio company, when I left, I don't need to mention them, and I don't even know why I'm talking about it. It was the very first time I felt very confident in my job because I was doing all the national stuff. I figured the local station was going to go away, but I was really up in the national imaging part of the company.
Yeah.
And, you know, Bob Pittman, who runs some company that we're not mentioning, actually knew me, knew my name. And so I said, the local station can go away. I'm good.
Yeah.
It's the only time I ever felt confident, like right around the corner, I wasn't going to lose my job. And that's when I lost it. So
when you're there and you're doing great in that career and for a company like that, you're on this kind of high.
Yeah.
Where you almost feel shielded. And you feel like, here's my and I have a weird way of thinking, but I thought if we go into World War III, if crap hits the fan, at least I got a good job and I know I'll be here through it. That's how
secure you felt.
You think you are, but you're literally, we're all one step away from getting the boot.
Yeah. And that's in any job, really.
Except mine.
Yeah. I mean, I think entertainment, even just not that company, but, the radio industry is going through some hard times with advertising rates down. And, the money, they try to stay in business, but, by chopping, I think the only stations that will probably still be able to succeed are these small market stations that are still doing live radio. So times are changing and you have to adapt. I still think about like the elevator operators in, the beginning of the 1900s. Every department store had one. Every apartment had one. There was a guy running the elevator up and down. I know that job got eliminated. I hope the guy that used to, who had his ups and downs, I hope he thought ahead and had something else to do.
What the elevator had his ups and downs. Don't you like that?
Thank you.
I see where
Dad
you're
jokes
going
here.
there.
Thank you. But I also think that you do have to adapt. And if radio is, I honestly don't think radio is on its last legs. It's still the most listened to medium. More people listen to radio than anything else.
Well, that's what Freddie tries to tell me.
Yes.
So Michelle is, so me and her, we always talk, and we're like
we love healthy debate.
So Michelle thinks nobody listens to the radio anymore, and my comeback usually is, well, the ratings still show that we had a 12 share last year at Cola. That's a lot. Right.
12% of all the people listening to the radio at that time were listening to you.
Yes. And that's like, think
cool.
of it as a GPA. It doesn't go higher than that. It's always like at a 4, 5, 6, maybe.
And 12 is high.
12 is extremely high.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there are also 80 signals in Los Angeles, roughly.
A lot of options.
So there are a lot. So even if you got 12%, there's amongst the other 79 stations, they're splitting up that other 90%. So you're doing well. You know what I mean?
So do you hear that a lot? Like when people say, oh, radio, what's that? My kids don't even know what radio is.
Well, yes. And it's sad. and I'll give you an example. So once a semester, I usually speak at USC's Annenberg School. So just kind of impart the wisdom and this and that, just to be able to answer questions, ask questions, answer questions. And they're more news oriented, but they do have a radio station. It's a closed circuit there that's kind of
cool.
near the bookstore. So let's say roughly 20-year-old, probably a median. And one guy said, because I was talking about how people have their shows, like you listen to the Real Don Steele show or the Freddie Rivera show and all of that. Like every DJ had their personality and you knew who you were listening to, even though it was the same station, but you kind of knew who you were listening to. And so the guy asked, he said, excuse my ignorance, but you're talking about like people had shows. Did they entertain? Did they talk? Like, what did they do? He had no concept of even what a Ryan Seacrest or a Rick Dees. It's a foreign thing to this person who wants to be in some kind of broadcasting. So I do think that because there are other opportunities to listen to music and listen to it when you want to hear it, you don't have to sit by the speaker with your microphone waiting to tape your favorite song, you know what I mean?
We all did, by the way.
Which we all did.
Yeah.
We all
I
did.
even had my voicemail. You know, he reached.
Yeah. Exactly. Remember that?
I remember that.
So between the records, they would talk and entertain or give facts or what? Like he really genuinely had never heard.
And how did you respond to that?
I said, yeah, because I had started with, you know, again, how it was and what's different and how you adapt to today's market as opposed to what you would have done, you know, even 10 years ago. I mean, even as recent as 10 years ago, it's changed so much. So, you know, I think it was eye-opening, not only to him to find out what a disc jockey, what a DJ really stood for.
Yeah, he just knows the term DJ, probably.
Yeah.
Can I share an example too?
Yeah.
I was on a date at a restaurant, first time. And so, you know, she asked what I did. I said, well, I work in radio and I'm a student pilot. And she goes, you're going to be a pilot?
Right. The whole thing is you're more proud of.
She glazed over the radio.
Like you're a personality,
She's like
man.
this, one of those.
Yeah. Well, I have an example going back. Well, shoot, I've been married almost 20 years. So let's say 30 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm on I don't know if it was a blind date, a first date, the absolute last date with this first date. But we're talking about a similar thing.
Yeah.
Where, what do you do? Oh, I'm like the imaging director of KISS FM. I put, you know, the stuff that goes between the records. And, you know, so anything that's not the record of the disc jockey, that's me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a full-time job? I go, yeah, it's a full-time job. She goes, but those things are only like 10, 30 seconds. It's like, how is that a job? Like there's no concept. Like, are you watching Star Wars and think they made that movie in an hour and a half?
No way.
It's like, come on.
Yeah.
But it's people just don't know.
What I've learned is you got to bring them to the station so they can visually see it.
Yes.
Then
it's impressive.
Yes. We've done the radio thing. We've done all this and we've seen how it's changed. Do you think that radio is going to have a resurgence? Or do you think it's just going to plateau and stay where it's at and kind of...
Yeah, I mean, and I think I talked about it a little bit last time, that I always knew that content was the important part. And it didn't end. And I realized maybe 20, 25 years ago, it doesn't matter to me how my work gets out. Is it a transmitter, an antenna, now the internet, something that hasn't even been invented yet. But content, like this podcast, is the currency. It's not really the distribution, like how it's distributed.
Right.
I think it's the content is really it. So does radio exist like an internet station? You know, there's 3 of them that are running out of my studio downstairs, you know, and so it's, you know, if I want to do a show, I can. If I don't, and I, at this point, don't. But you can just do it just to have fun. And there's some people that have actually been able to monetize the internet stations. Very, very few.
Wow.
Very, very few. So, but so that's a vehicle to get it out. Can you make money? Harder to. If you do a podcast, it's hard to play music in a podcast because the rights are so high.
Right.
So you have to do something that's more akin to talk radio.
Right.
Like this.
Yeah.
So I think once the streaming rights and all of that can kind of get worked out where it's feasible, I think that becomes the new radio. Because, you know, when we were at Spotify, they were working on something, and I guess I can talk about it now because it was totally killed. But and this was the reason I was real excited to change from the Parcast side over to the live side. And I remember talking about this with you, but I couldn't say what it was at that time. But what they were going to do is like a national morning show, let's say. It could have been any time of day. I'll just say morning show for now. But during that same time is where they came up with that AI DJ kind of thing, although they hadn't called it yet. And I don't think X had recorded, he's the voice of Spotify.
I kind of like that feature of Spotify.
Yeah. So, but the way that I saw that, if they were able to generate a voice and say whatever it is, so you have like your national show, and feel free to steal it because I can't afford to do it myself. But you have your national show, every other song, every third song, they're doing their little national bit. In between song 1 and 2, the AI local voice comes on, and it's customized for you, Freddie, and you, Michelle, because it knows what songs you can use your playlist. And maybe once an hour they'd play whatever song they're trying to push or whatever. Yeah. So now you have a fully customizable radio station that's playing Freddie's favorite songs, being entertained by a nationally well-known DJ, Freddie Rivera. And in between, the AI voice is, hey, Freddie, time to go to work. There's a lot of traffic on the 10.
Yeah.
So you better leave 10 minutes early. It could be customized that specifically. And that got me so excited. And we were looking into who could do this national show. And because I didn't know the AI guys. I met them in like Florida or something at a meeting. And it's like, wait a minute, what can you do? What are you working on? Yeah. And the rest of that whole meeting, because I was on like every panel because I was management then. And I was the same thing, like I'm talking to you. I was still jazzed about the potential that this could really happen. And that will kill terrestrial radio. Right. Let's say the Spotify or whoever does it, they have all your stats already. They know,
they know
whether
the
you're
algorithm.
listening. They know whether you're listening in the car. They know if you're listening at home. They know if you're walking because they can tell by basically the GPS how fast you're moving. So they already know that stuff. They might not know your name because if you sign up as Radio Flyer, I'm Format 3000 and whatever. So I don't think it'd be specific with your name specifically, but they would know that you're in LA or they would know you're in New York. And they could just drop in the weather or traffic sucks today or whatever, just between the records that makes it customizable to you, playing over the song or in between the songs that are on your favorites list, or you just use the AI feature and let it pick its stuff for you. So, and I know this is now dead at Spotify, so I don't mind talking about it now, but that was the thing that got me so excited. And it's like, yes, Max Cutler, I will leave the Parcast side, go with you to the live, which was Green Room, that you were editing, those things. So it was like Facebook Live, those kind of things. But it was like live talk show. And all you needed was your phone, and everybody who was listening was a phone. It was like Clubhouse. Now, for example, X, Xavier is his name, is the voice of Spotify, or the first voice of Spotify. I think they now have some in Spanish and whatnot. So he basically sold the rights to his voice, had a whole separate contract and whatever he worked out, so they could probably use his voice forever. Yeah. But let's say Brad Pitt was doing a movie and somebody samples Brad Pitt's voice. Yeah. You can't use it in your answering machine message or some other movie or things like that. That's that, and I'm very protective of that too. Now, an advantage if you owned the rights to Art LeBeau, who did, 72 years on the radio, and they have hours and mountains of audio of him.
I can imagine they probably do.
And they could, in essence, and AI is getting better. It's not 100% yet, but it's getting better. There are a couple of companies that the inflections are right and the pauses and things like that. So if you were able to type, hey, this is for Jesse in Pacoima, sending it out to Maria in Santa Fe, and have it Art LeBeau current. I mean, nobody would think that it's really
God, do you think that could fly? Do you know?
I don't know. I think people would be offended that you're using Art LeBeau, but I'm just saying, like, as an example, there are ways, and I know in was it Top Gun, where whatever the actor lost his voice, Val Kilmer. So they were able to sample it and use it, but he still appeared in that movie.
Yeah.
So they weren't using it for anything.
They were using it for him.
They were using it for him and only for that.
So it wasn't like when they used the Tupac Shakur
the
hologram at Coachella.
Yeah.
That was
I don't know.
unnecessary.
I hope the family was involved in that decision.
I'm sure.
Well, I feel like anything that has to do with Tupac is just a money grab.
Yeah. But
Everything.
that was crazy. I'm like, this was so unnecessary. It was more funny and gimmicky than it was.
Weird. It was just weird.
It was weird.
The way they treat people in tech versus in radio was night and day. I mean, the first thing I noticed, and the first thing I'm going to say, is there was a giant cafeteria where they gave everybody food.
Like Google and like...
Yes, but it's not just, cafeteria food. It's like legit fancy food sometimes. And I didn't want to go because I felt guilty of getting free food every single day. I'm like, I don't want to be known as that employee. And Ron's like, no.
Everybody does.
Take full advantage.
Yeah.
Yes. If they are offering it.
That's the perk of your job.
Yeah. They had a vending machine that had earbuds and...
Like at the airports? Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, like that. But all you did was swipe your badge and, went to your budget. But, I got earbuds.
But tech companies, they have a budget for things like that.
Like Netflix, like Channel 5, the morning news at Channel 5, I always laugh because Netflix is on there where their lot is. And one of the guys got to go to Netflix and saw the food and the this and the that. He goes, we're lucky if somebody brings in donuts.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's radio. Radio, you're lucky unless, some restaurant is trying to, for donut day, they want a mention of Dunkin' Donuts or something.
It's wild though, because there's here's what blew my mind. There's a lot of young kids who work at these tech companies, which means it's probably one of their first real jobs.
Yes.
How are they going to survive after that job?
Right.
It sets the bar very high.
Well, see, that's the thing because, my team at Spotify brought the average up. We had the youngest, but we also had the oldest on my team. So when they got rid of all 200 people, the median age of Spotify dropped because there were 6 people on my team, 55 plus, which is very unusual in tech. All of us, there was one person left in the whole company at 55 years old. So it went back young. But so and I'm going to sound like I'm a grandfather here, but the young kids, the young whippersnappers that came in for their first job, they felt that, what do you mean this is a big deal? You should give me breakfast. You should give me lunch. You should give me free computers or whatever.
It is
and
wild.
And so all the people on my team that came from radio go, are you out of your mind?
I would think
Don't you know how good you have it?
Yes.
Don't work for the state of California, I'll tell you that.
Right.
Everything you get rewarded in a pizza party or something.
Oh, yeah.
And that's because...
And there's nothing wrong with it.
And that's because that's what a manager paid.
Yes. Right. Because the state actually can't.
The state's not paying it. Exactly.
They can't. Because
Which is cool, like you said. If you like pizza, that's awesome. But here's what my son said, because he's loves hospitality. He wants to be an actor very bad, but he loves hospitality industry. And I was telling Freddie, this is why. He said he wants to get paid according to his skill. Like at
that
me,
seems fair.
Every single person gets paid the same, no matter if you're a good employee or a bad employee. When he's a server or someone at a restaurant or any of that stuff, if he has the best customer service, he gets the best tips.
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody who's really rude or leaves your food, leaves you hanging.
That's the way
you get paid
that's
less.
the way the game is played for the most part, though.
Yeah.
And so when I feel like a lot of these kids have a lot of
entitlement.
They have a prerequisite in their head of what it should be, how I should get paid, how this should be. Yeah. And I get it. You're ambitious. You're young. You're smart. Mm-hmm. You're like, I see over everyone's heads. I can see the end game here. Here's my idea, but it's they don't last.
And they probably have a degree, so they feel like they've done all that schooling,
even more
and
entitled,
paid all that money.
But
my daughter has a master's. She's still looking for work. So
I know it's hard.
Yeah,
I don't imagine there was a high turnover rate like at Spotify versus other companies with the young people. But I mean, do they last?
So certain people, and again, as a manager, I see things differently and it's different. my generation was, my dad's generation was, you got the job at the aerospace company and you stayed there till you retired. And that's kind of what my dad did, although he had a second job after retiring. And then for me, it was more about loyalty. Like I stayed at my jobs basically till they asked me to leave, unless there was a rare instance where something, I just couldn't turn it down. I stayed at America Top 40 almost 8 years. I stayed at Kiss FM almost 8 years. I was at Hot, Mega, all those different things. If you add that all up, it was almost 17 years, maybe? Is that about right? Could be. Something like that, whatever. So I'm always loyal. Now, I don't know that everybody, my age is still loyal or still working for that matter. But it just seems like the people I talk to, they're changing jobs every 6 months. And they are getting bigger pay, more. But at some point, as a manager, I'm looking, it's like, why would if you're changing jobs every 6 months, why do I want to invest in you?
That's exactly what I would think.
I don't want to sound like it's crazy, but you're wasting my time. If I know you're just going to jump, because I look at the last 4 jobs or 5 jobs,
right.
I'm not even going to, your resume comes across my desk. I see how often you changed. I'm not even going to seriously consider you.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of supervisors and they have the same sentiment. I do too. It shows inconsistency
or just lack of ambition. Well, no, not lack of ambition, because you're trying to get more money, but it's strictly a money grab. Are you happy?
It's like lack of loyalty or lack of, putting your work in, and I don't know. I'm a from the ground up person too.
Here's my other question. But so I mean, I get it's obvious because
sounds like an angry old man tonight. I thought we were talking about tech.
I know, right? Spotify. How hard is it to get a job at
It's
Spotify?
easier to get into Harvard than it is to get into Spotify.
Wow. And you got in, Freddie. How?
Wow.
Because he knew Ron Shapiro. And I stumbled my way in only through an acquisition.
Okay.
Like I'm 100% positive they wouldn't have hired me without it coming along.
You started in downtown LA at the Row. Is that where it all began?
Well, it started in Woodland Hills. So Parkcast was in Woodland Hills.
There. Okay, got it.
And then at that time when we were in Woodland Hills, Spotify actually had offices on Bunker Hill. Like, where the big City National Bank is, the top of over Pershing Square.
Yeah.
It's the other building. So that's where they were. Parking was like $55 if I had to go. I only had to go a couple of times. I ended up taking the bus and the subway.
Park there?
Yeah, it's like crazy.
I had to use my own money to park at Spotify sometimes.
Yeah.
I still have parking passes.
Anywhere in LA
anybody
like
listening,
that.
I still have some parking passes for Mateo if you need them.
Yeah.
I'll sell them to you cheap at a discount, But so that's where they were. And then when we got acquired, they moved us to the Row because there was no room downtown Bunker Hill, and the buildings that we were at on Mateo weren't built yet.
Oh,
so they had, so they kind of moved over there. I think one floor was there for more HR stuff.
Was the building on Mateo? Was it the pandemic that delayed that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, got it. It's a gutted meat packing building, or what?
You know what? I don't remember what it was.
Okay,
because I know the Nabisco plant was down the street, but I don't remember. You know
Some
what?
kind of warehouse.
Yeah, it was a warehouse for sure.
That's what I love about tech. The buildings look so modern. Everything looks cool.
Remember that playroom? With the pool table?
On the second floor. Yeah. So that was the podcast floor. So the third floor had something different. And then the other building. Yeah, that's where the ringer was on the third floor.
Oh, wow. So where did you go after Spotify?
I went on a lot of vacations.
Good for you.
Because, and the reason was that I knew Max was working on something.
Yes.
But I didn't know details yet. And actually, on my first day, I still didn't know the details. It was really weird. But so I knew something was coming. He thought it might start September, October, but it could be January, February.
Okay.
So I knew I had something to go to. So for those 6 months, from June to December, pretty much, I went to Europe with my wife, went to Spain and Portugal.
Awesome.
Came back, then went to Cancun with the whole family.
Wow.
My wife travels a lot, for speaking engagements at conferences and stuff. So I went with her to all these other places. I was in DC a couple times and ran into like people I used to work with, in radio, like Jeff Wyatt. Lived out there. So I had lunch with him and Bernie Lucas, who was the imaging guy at the iHeart station in DC for a million years, and he had just retired. So, I got to see
Really
people
cool.
went to a baseball game, the Nationals game. Can't tell you who they played. I didn't really care. I just wanted to go to the
That's
stadium.
very cool, though.
Yeah.
But I traveled a lot in those 6 months. And, since January, I really haven't had a day off because
Sounds
of
like
the
my kind of
startup.
life.
Yeah.
But next year it'll kind of settle down a little bit because it is a startup.
Yeah,
We're
you
laying
have to
the
work really hard
foundation.
for a startup in the beginning.
So everybody's doing everything, but it's starting to settle. And I'm real excited because it's not a podcast company. It's called Pave Studios, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's not, there are podcasts, but that's not what the company is. It's really a multimedia company. We're doing books, like print books, audio books,
Oh, so print
Print
books as well.
also. Okay.
Wow.
branding. So let's say you're a podcaster, but you have a deal with a big company. So you can't do a video podcast with us or an audio podcast. But a lot of these people that have all this knowledge, they might want to write a book. Well, I don't have a deal for a book over there. Hey, Dave can help you get your word out in a different way, or audio books, taking your, there's just so many avenues that I don't even know. Like Max really is a genius.
Wow.
I don't know that he'll listen to this podcast, but if he did, Max is a genius. But no, and actually I was on the phone with him right before coming
wow.
in, like right
Cool.
outside
So
the
he-
studio.
He knows that you're going to do this today.
He did. He was
Okay.
very happy for me.
Very
so, yeah.
cool.
Awesome.
Well, we'll have to get him a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes, I'd
Ron-
like a CD of this broadcast thing we're doing here tonight. Can you send me a cassette?
some of the talents that work at Pave, one of them is Dr. Mark Hyman, right? Or he has a podcast.
Right. So
On
he
tape.
has his own, which is Doctor's Pharmacy, but he also does one for us called Health Hacks.
Okay, got it.
So they're two separate things, but we do produce his Doctor's Pharmacy. So we're like the producing arm, like the contractor
Right.
for Doctor's Pharmacy, but we're partners with Health Hacks.
See, I found out about Dr. Hyman through YouTube. It was just, did you have alcohol last night? Did you drink? Well, here are 5 ways to, cleanse your whatever. Or, do you feel bloated?
So you
well, here are
stumbled upon
reasons.
it?
And I'm like, oh. And then after watching some of his YouTube, I bought his book.
That's great. I know he'll be happy
It's
about
pretty
that.
interesting book also.
Food,
Yeah.
what the heck should I eat? And it gets really, it's really him. Us against the big food industry is what the book is about.
Right. I mean, his whole thing is gut health. Gut health.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a lot to it. I have not followed his plan or seen him and talked to him, but I have heard the podcast, of course. But
So you haven't met him at all then?
virtually,
Oh, okay.
other people are directly involved with that show. I'm more
Got it.
overseeing all of the production, but I'm not intimately involved with every single show.
I saw one of my favorite podcasters on there, Ashley Flowers.
So we're doing a show with her currently.
Oh, good.
So back at Spotify, we did a show called Supernatural with Ashley
Yes.
Flowers. So that show has now been resurrected,
Oh, good.
which is it's similar to the original So Supernatural. Ashley does the intro, but we have 2 hosts, and these 2 people, discounting the people that are in this room, these 2 people that host So Supernatural are my 2 favorite people to work with. They're sisters. They had their own podcast prior, The Root of Evil.
I heard of that.
Their great grandfather was Dr. George Hodel, who is thought to be the one who killed the Black Dahlia.
I did hear
Wow.
about them. Yes.
Yes. So, and they did a movie on Hulu, which unfortunately isn't available in the States. I've tried to VPN to watch it, but I haven't seen it yet. But it's about their mother and the whole relationship. So they are fascinating. They are the sweetest, nicest people. Rasha Pecoraro and Yvette Gentile. They're the hosts.
Very
but
cool.
But Ashley, it's still Ashley's show, but we're
she's
putting
got
the
a
show
few of
together.
them.
But we're putting the show
So
together.
when you get a chance, if Ashley is ever around, and Michelle probably wants to meet her, and so
Okay.
maybe we connect. With you.
I read
That'd be
her
pretty
book
cool.
that she wrote, All Good People
Yeah,
Here.
she read her book
she's
and everything.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I met her a couple times.
She's
How
a
is she-
really
is she
nice
cool?
person.
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
cool.
she knows what makes us obviously Crime Junkies.
Yeah.
The top 5 all the
Yeah,
time.
I
you know?
listened to it for years.
You did,
And
yeah.
for years and years, it was every time we do the Spotify year end, it would come up as number one. And he's like, how come Radio Flyer's not number one? I'm like,
and Radio Flyer was mine, remember?
Freddie,
That's right. That's right.
Oh, I think we talked about that.
In one of the year ends.
We got to get these episodes out.
We got to get them out.
Yeah, no.
Year end's coming soon.
What, Ron? I think you're going to be like number 2 or 3. So
on this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
So what is it? What's your position, or what do you do exactly at PAVE?
Okay, so the title is VP Production, Vice President of Production.
Okay.
So it's basically overseeing all the production, whether it's video, audio, not necessarily the books, but if we do audio books, that would come under me, and then I'll eventually have a full team. I have Kristen Acevedo, who I worked with at Spotify. I call her my twin. And we call each other twin, not like work wife or whatever. We're twins because together we make one really good employee.
Awesome.
So
One's good at what the other one isn't. We're kind of like that a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she's awesome at production and the paperworky development stuff. She's great at production, but she doesn't really love doing that. So I can do all the outlines and the paperwork and the budgets and all, but I don't really love that, but I love the production.
Yeah.
So we're able to share.
That's cool.
We're doing big things. I mean, we've only really been in business since April.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very new.
So it's very new. And the amount of talent, Khloe Kardashian,
Yeah,
we're doing a show with her,
Mm-hmm.
Ashley Flowers, Mark Hyman, and there's other that I don't know if they've been announced yet.
I need to pick Max Cutler's brain on how to set the finances and money part of.
And he knows that, you know.
Yeah.
But, podcast was just started with him and his dad's money. They did it, So now, he did okay with Spotify. And so he's able to do it at a bigger scale now. But again, it's private. It's a private company. So
as this progresses and it gets bigger, do you plan on staying with Max Cutler?
I would love it. I mean, in all likelihood, this will be the last job before retirement.
Right.
But I'm hoping it goes for years. I mean, I'm not looking to retire. I mean, I do my hobby as a career.
Yeah.
I don't build models. I don't have a train set. I don't know. I don't garden. I have too many allergies. I can't work with a garden. So I'd rather just keep putting together shows or
Yeah.
I'm with you there.
whatever.
Well, that's what
Claritin.
we were just talking about that. That if you love what you do, it's not really working, and you can do it forever because it doesn't feel like work.
You're right, because we were talking about retiring, I feel like people are realizing if you keep working or if you keep having some kind of hobby, if you keep your brain functioning going, man, people just go on. It's just like another section of
It's
life.
scary to think about too.
In today's world, and here's a question: How does somebody get a freaking job?
I wish I had a real answer. I think persistence. I think that if you're open to other ways of doing the same thing, like also like when I talked to the school, I know we kind of touched on it very briefly, but it's like if you don't get a job as a disc jockey, let's say, or like when I was starting, like in production, like, okay, you're not working at a TV station or a radio station that's a glamour kind of thing, but there's still industrial films. There are still demos for people. You can still do what you want to do. It might not just be as glamorous, but you can still apply your technical skills, your audio skills. The hard part with all of that is how do you keep your income where it was?
Yeah.
And frankly, nobody's paying what Spotify pays,
Yeah, that's true.
And even the people that work at Netflix and Google, they're downsizing as well. So I don't know. I don't think they would cut anybody's pay, but I would bet that people coming in are not getting the same now.
What do you think the reason is for all the downsizing? Is it the
Financial?
economy?
And it's not because of interest rates or this or that. I think businesses are changing for radio, like advertising. Like I have a syndicated radio show with Rick Noon, Top 10 Now and Then. Just celebrated our 20th anniversary, which is amazing. But we have steadily seen we have more stations than we did 10 years ago, but the income is maybe 20% of what it used to be. Like, I think supply and demand, there's so many more vehicles for Geico to advertise on,
Yeah.
or whatever, that it's like radio's, scrapping it out for whatever they can get. And the iHearts and the Odysseys and all those that have the digital footprints, finally advertising agencies are getting podcasts. They're finally getting online. Mm-hmm. They're so slow to react, and they still are. Like Ashley Flowers or people that have how many millions of downloads every week should be having like Coca-Cola's, not a mattress company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you should be having the national brands.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I also think for radio to succeed, they've got to start aiming for their demos higher. And I've said this for years. You are not going to get the 18 to 24-year-old anymore. Right. You flat out aren't. And even the 25-54 is getting tougher and tougher. But you know who is still listening to radio? The boomers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't count. They're 54 plus. They don't count in the ratings. But why do you think more people watch MeTV than any of the other cable news channels or the cable others? MeTV, they aim for the people that are 55 plus. They have a bigger audience. Why do you think CBS is still successful?
Yeah.
It's that Angela Lansbury crowd.
All the older shows.
The older shows that are still entertaining.
Those are the best shows.
And I'm not saying I watch these or listen to these or whatever, but I've been fighting for years with radio's decline. Why am I no longer valuable to you? I have more disposable income than a 12-year-old. I have more time to travel than a 25-year-old. You're aiming for people that don't have money. It would be so smart. Like, KF is doing what they're doing now, and Cola, the 90s are oldies, and that's true. It's 40 years ago.
Right.
It is oldies. But there are still people alive that have money, that will spend their money, that would love to hear songs from the 70s or 60s even,
That's such a great point. And that
even the 80s is too old now.
That reminded me of a comment I saw, I think it was on Reddit. They're like, radio stations have been saying the 80s, 90s, and today for 20 years now.
Right. At least.
So today has been 20 years.
Yeah.
Today is now the 2010s.
You know what's funny is I still think of like 2000 as a current. Like if I hear something from 2000, that's current.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Like for top 10 now and then.
But you know what's
Anything
weird?
this century.
I think a lot of people do. I don't think it's just us.
Okay.
I think everyone sees it as old music, then there's 80s, 90s, and then
there's
everything new.
Tinty,
I think everybody still sees it that way.
I still see 80s and 90s to me as 20 years ago. That's how it feels.
Right, exactly.
When you think about it, it's really not.
But 2000 was 24, almost 25 years ago.
I know. Don't say that.
A quarter century ago.
Did you know that was my graduation year?
Oh my
2000?
God.
2000.
Oh, I won't tell you mine.
Too. What? What'd you say?
I won't tell you mine.
Well,
I had to do homework on stone tablets. That's how.
So we used an abacus.
Yeah,
ancient abacus to do our math.
was brand new.
We did our math on papyrus paper.
Well, we always joke. We're like, Michelle and I have known each other since 1912 when the Titanic sank.
Yeah, we always say that because we feel like we've known each other for that
so
long.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, when I was young, the Dead Sea was only partially sick.
It was still sick then.
It only had pneumonia at the time.
Exactly.
Well, okay, here's an important question.
Okay.
Radio.
Yes.
If radio focuses on going back to just local and local.
Can they make a living?
Is that
though?
enough?
I don't think that's enough. That's part of the equation, part of the puzzle. I think having somebody that can answer the phones when a listener calls, because even when I programmed a station, it's like if you have a 26-second intro, have at it.
Yeah.
But don't stop the music for more than a second or so.
Right.
To do it. Try to do it over an intro. And now songs don't even have intros. And that's all because of Spotify as well. So those songs that used to be like 4 minutes, they're all like all of the current songs right now. Not all. Also, the majority of current songs now are all 2-3 minutes now. It's back like the 60s.
Why though? Why is that?
Because if you are Sabrina Carpenter,
okay,
and you have a 4-minute song and it's playing on Spotify, you're getting paid once. Now, let's say somebody wants to listen to 2 songs and they're both 2 minutes. They're still spending that 4 minutes. But now you're getting paid for 2 songs.
Smart.
And because people are punching in and out so quick, almost all the songs now start with a hook, if not the whole song being a hook.
Yeah.
So it's just a musical trend, but I understand the business reason for that trend. Like forever and ever, it was always 2 verses, a chorus, and a verse, and maybe the chorus again to fade out the record.
Right.
And songs up until the mid to late 70s were all roughly 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Then they all became 4.5 minutes, and so stations would play only 12 songs an hour. Like at Kiss FM, you were lucky if you got 12 songs in that hour.
It was always Earth, Wind, and Fire and the Eagles were the long ones, the live versions.
Yeah.
Then you
Those
go
were
to
the bathroom songs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Stairway to Heaven was mine when I was on the air.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, gotta go.
If you heard
Coming
Stairway to
next,
Heaven, it was like, gotta run down the hall. You know?
Yeah. Well, I saw something on YouTube where they were talking about now bands. Like these, your neighbors down the street who have a band in their garage and they're trying to do a thing. So they're performing at the Whiskey Go-Go and the Troubadour. They're not making any money, they're not doing anything. But they always fall flat because record labels now do not want to pay for everybody. So that's why bands are dying. Bands, actual
I like
bands
too.
because
Meaning they don't want to pay for the whole group. They want to pay for the lead singer.
That's what I heard. That's according to the video.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
But,
that's why bands don't go anywhere.
well, Måneskin, the guy went solo. I saw him, the other night.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't remember his name now. I know he has 2 first names. David was the last name. I can't remember his name. I'm drawing a blank. But I think you're probably right. It's like there used to be bands. Like, try to find a band on R&B radio.
Right.
Now, like an Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Right.
Yeah, they're not. It's one person.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a guest star, most likely.
Yeah.
So, music changes. Music's always changing.
Yeah.
And I think we're in this cycle, because there's like a 10-year cycle of music, whether it's the boy bands, the rock. Right now we're in the little country phase that,
we are.
Like the urban,
We are.
like the urban
We
cowboy.
really are.
No, we are. I think I talked about this last time, like when I got the job at American Top 40 at Watermark. One of the shows I worked on was American Country Countdown. And, when they said, oh, you're working on the country show, it's kind of like, really? Because that was my gut reaction, disco was king then or whatever. But, but the country artists were the nicest, most genuine, sincere, and they loved radio.
That's what I keep hearing.
That's cool.
I went to more concerts like at the Palomino and the Greek, seeing everybody's first show, Reba McEntire's first show. I was sitting as close as I am to you.
Wow. Wow.
All these people, George Strait, all these people that played the Palomino in North Hollywood. And there used to be a place out here, I can't remember the name, but it's the equivalent of the Palomino, but it was out here. Okay. And again, it was like the country place. Every country artist who came through LA played the Palomino. They played.
Okay.
It wasn't Golden Bear. I'm sure whoever's listening now is saying, Ron, you idiot, it's boom. but there were like these handful of things. But being in country radio, I never got that kind of access to pop artists or anything like that. So even if you work at country radio, how much do you really listen to the songs while they're playing? Aren't you working on getting your next bit? Does it really matter what songs you're playing?
No, it doesn't.
You just want to entertain and you want to have a good time.
And especially nowadays, country today isn't really country. It's basically pop.
Right. And even in the 80s when we were doing American Country Countdown, everybody was moaning and groaning, this isn't country.
Yeah.
This isn't like Flat and Scruggs and, whatever. So every generation is like even Garth Brooks is, well, he's got problems now. But that era of the hat guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're old. They've been playing 30, 40 years now, too.
You know what country I've always liked? I don't know if he's really country.
Shabuzi.
Well, no.
I like Shabuzi.
I do, too. I do.
It's very catchy.
Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
His music is always good.
Yeah. Very good music.
I never really considered it as country. It was just OG music. I don't know.
Right.
It was cool.
I mean, in theory, it was country.
Yeah.
Bluegrass, country, whatever. But yeah.
Geez. Well, I guess.
We sure didn't even talk about careers or whatever you wanted to talk about. I know we got...
that was exactly what I wanted to talk
good.
about.
Okay.
Yeah. No, because we talked about careers last time.
Yeah. No, I know.
And,
but like advice and all of that.
Okay, so Michelle and I are always going back and forth about the radio thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I still love radio.
I don't love radio.
I don't want you to think that because I don't think that radio is doing all that well now that I dislike radio. I don't really listen like I did, but I'm also doing different things. So it's, but I do have a syndicated radio show. I want people to listen.
it's funny because I'll never, especially with something that's unknown to me. I've never worked in radio, so I can't say definitively if I think it's dying or it's coming back or anything like that. I'm just looking at the trend of media in general. I'm a customer.
Yeah.
Right.
So I can only speak from a customer's point of view. So I'm speaking about media in general. I've seen cassettes go from cassettes to CDs to now streaming. And all
back
that
to
stuff
vinyl, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And back to vinyl because I hope my dad is listening. Please don't, I don't hope anything ever happens to you, Dad, but I am the oldest. So he has an extensive vinyl collection and I'm getting it. I will fight.
Wow.
I will fist fight my siblings for this vinyl collection because not just that it's worth a lot now, but it's so nostalgic. And they sell, little record players that you could stream on speakers now and Bluetooth it and do all that stuff. And you could still play the same vinyl. But we've seen vinyl, we've seen cassettes, 8-track, all the stuff that came to now streaming. And it put all of those people out of business. Like, I'm sure people are buying CDs, but it's, I don't know, who's
Middle
buying,
of the country, probably.
yeah, exactly. And then I worked at Blockbuster. We talked about that on another podcast. So I got to see cassettes to, the actual videotape
The
cassettes.
VHS,
to DVDs. And I still have a huge DVD collection, but people trip out. If they come over and they're like, you have DVDs? And the look on their face is so confused. But I love it because I don't have to. I paid for it a long time ago. I'm not paying again.
Right.
I have not gotten rid of any of my records, any of my.
But the streaming
my daughters know which
capability is
shelf.
clearer.
My daughters know. Don't ever sell these unless you really need the money because these are the valuable ones on this shelf.
Exactly.
And the Paul McCartney signed one. Although my nephew claims he's going to get that one.
Oh, the Paul McCartney one.
Imagine. Oh my gosh. So is he the oldest too? Just kidding.
My nephew, he is the oldest nephew.
I kid.
Yeah.
So so that we have the Netflix and the, the Hulu and the every streaming service under the sun. And they're doing away with the CDs and they did away with the video cassettes. They did away with all that stuff. So to me, I'm thinking the same for radio. And I went through the same thing with books. And I'm a book person. Freddie will tell you. I do have a Kindle that I don't really use anymore, but I have a Kindle up on my phone. I do like to listen to audiobooks when I'm on the go or driving. But the smell and the feel of a book, there's nothing like it.
See, that's for a record for me.
Exactly.
It's like I remember when I would go ride my bike to the record store when I was like 14 or whatever. And I'd get like the new album. And when you slit the cellophane, the smell of that cardboard and the vinyl in there. I mean, I could smell it, like talking about it. I haven't thought about this.
Cassettes had that smell too, in a weird way.
Right, the oxide on the tape.
Is that what it was? Yeah. You would know. See,
you open a little wrap and then you could smell it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So I'm thinking
there's
for
something
radio,
tactile. You need something tactile. You need to be able to hold it, smell it, see it, something.
And I know radio is a little different because you've never been able to hold it, smell it, taste it, feel it, or any of that stuff. But you're changing the channel. Maybe an ad comes on. Let's go to 991 now. That ad comes on. Let's go to 102.7 now. Let that 105.9. Let's go to the whole circle of stuff. And we used to have it running all the time and know all the people on the morning shows, know all the people in the Art Lebeau Sunday night and all of that good stuff. And now with streaming, like you can fast forward ads a lot of the times. There's some times where I just want to listen to 60s soul and I want to listen to it because I have a 2-hour drive and I don't want to hear anything else. But then 10 minutes later, after I hear that, I could hear somebody like Bruce Springsteen, or I could turn it on disco, or I could do new music.
The convenience and the I want it now
factor. How am I going to think? What country state? I wouldn't even know a country station if I tried.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even know a 60s soul station right now off the top of my head if I tried. And then
not over the air,
right?
Or not in LA.
So now I want to listen to Sabrina Carpenter. Do I go to here or there or that? It's just one of those things where the convenient factor, I think, more people, like you're saying, new people that come in.
How often do you go back to radio, if you ever do?
When I know you're on.
So basically, you're doing it as support for me.
Right.
Yeah,
you know what?
And not every time, but if I know if I know the times and I know I'm driving somewhere, even if it's for 10, 20 minutes, I'll listen in and see what you're playing or like listen to, or he'll be like, I'm going to do a shout out on the radio. He's done that for me for years. And yeah, I mean, it's more for a support thing, but I'm not just me. And like you said, I don't account for even 1% of the community or the world, but just thinking, I don't think a lot of people are as interested anymore than they used to be.
I think it's if you're in the car is your best chance that you're
I think the car also, because most people don't have the AM FM radios at home anymore.
I consider you one of the radio geniuses in my circle. I really do. And I'm
well, thank you.
In a statement, what does radio need to do to really make that comeback now?
Somehow make it personal, and the way they measure ratings is changing this year. Either it just changed or it is changing.
From the PPM?
It'll still be PPM, but it used to be for like a quarter hour, you had to listen for 6 minutes to get the full credit of 15 minutes?
I think so, right?
Which goes back to the old radio soap opera days, by the way. I don't know why quarter hour is still used 90 years later.
Yeah.
But anyway. But they're changing it where instead of, and I don't know the exact number, so instead of 6 minutes to count for your whole 15 minutes, I think it's going down to 3. So if that's the case, what I would do personally, get rid of those 8 to 12 minute commercial breaks.
Yes.
Break it up more often. You can play 2 songs and have 2 minutes of commercials. Hey, we're back in, 60 seconds. Or play one commercial. Hey, we're only 60 seconds away from another hit. Boom, and you're back. Break more often. Yeah. And I think if it's short, people don't care. It's like watching a streaming show as opposed to pay for the commercial. So if you're watching Freevee, let's say, and you know that there's only going to be 70 seconds of commercials,
you might not change the channel.
You might not. It's like, okay, I'll sit through this because it's only 70 seconds. Maybe I'll get a glass of water or something. But if you know. Like I landed at Burbank Airport. I live maybe 11 miles from there. I got picked up in a Lyft. They had on, I don't know if it was Coast or Kiss, but it was one of those. It was an iHeart station. I do know that. We left Burbank Airport. As we're pulling into the driveway, it finally came out of commercials. I rode the entire way from Hollywood, Burbank to Eagle Rock, all in commercials. How is radio going to survive?
Yeah, and that's how they're getting paid, but that's too much. People are changing the channel.
If I was a client and I was stuck in the middle of that break,
it's definitely a big
turn-off.
It's
a waste of money.
Right.
I mean,
even the podcasts are leaning there a little bit because I like one of my favorite ones right now, Big Mad True Crime. So a lot of times she does her own ads.
Right, the endorsements.
And like for HelloFresh, and she'll talk about how she's a terrible cook and this meal kit helps me cook like a professional chef. But she goes on for like 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and she has to repeat again, HelloFresh, and it just gets so redundant. And you're like, because you're trying to stretch out this long commercial.
What is your take on endorsements?
As long as you use the product, I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they talk about it like they use it.
Well,
like,
they have to.
At least they do.
So going back to radio and why I'm a very firm believer that you don't use unlicensed music. Mm-hmm. And I'm a very firm believer, if you're going to tell me and endorse some product, you better have used it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because something where he was talking about some product, he never ever used it. And people bought this thing and it turned out to be some kind of scam. I don't remember exactly.
That's awful.
I don't remember the details, but it was like a huge thing. And like there was some lawsuit because the listeners felt duped. But they did send you the away luggage and you used it and you really liked it and that's part of your endorsement.
Yeah.
Fine. If you didn't like it and you're still talking about it, then I find that's a problem.
I think
But also you don't need, like I know HelloFresh and all of those others because we do those commercials too, BetterHelp, all of those things. Mm-hmm. So they basically pay for a minute commercial. But there's stuff you have to say. There's always the required copy, but everything else you can kind of talk about.
And they also give you a discount code.
Yeah.
Right.
To like
that's how they know whether you heard their commercial.
Yeah, for
on
Freddie's
that
listeners.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that way they can track where they're spending their money on advertising, where it's paying off.
Yep.
That's the same reason. Same reason they used to have the phone numbers, like when you watched on TV.
Yep.
Call 1-800 da 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 da.
Yeah, it's different for those people that are watching.
So every channel had a different phone number, so they would know.
That's pretty cool.
I think they have to rethink, like, what will listeners tolerate? How do you make it more customizable? Is there a technology in terrestrial radio where you can make it a little more relatable? But if you're going to just do all national shows all day, and there's nothing wrong with that, network TV is, other than the news, is pretty much, there's nothing local, and they survive and they do well. And I think national chains can still do well, and it's almost like XM, Sirius XM.
Right.
It's like, yes, hits one, you're hearing the exact same program all around the country. You don't think that, well, he's not in LA and I'm upset.
How do they get ratings on Sirius XM? I wonder about that. How do they, I mean, besides subscribers.
How do they measure it? Oh, it's all subscribers.
Okay.
That's all my dad listens to now.
But can they tell a certain number of subscribers are listening, at a certain time?
I think you get all of that, how many streams are going at any one time.
Got it. And the reason why I ask you these questions is because I want to have this conversation, because other radio people are going to see, and these are the things that need to be talked about, because everyone is kind of just going with the motion that's been set in place for so many years already, and nothing's changing. Absolutely nothing is changing. And
I wish I had the answers, because I'd be very wealthy if I could consult a station.
So would Freddie.
Yeah, but it just seems the things that are obvious to me and have been obvious for a very long time, not even just in the last 10 years that I've been out, is go for the demographic that's actually willing to listen to you. Number one, that's how you're going to succeed.
Yeah.
If you're a local station and you're a college town, then maybe play younger music. If you're in Palm Springs Retirement, Rancho Mirage, you should be playing that 50s, 60s, 70s music. And I think you'll succeed. You have the casinos out there that'll advertise, or whatever, whoever's coming through on a show. You'll get advertisers, but will you make a lot of money? That I don't know. But I definitely know 8-10 minute stop sets twice an hour. Why would I want to listen to that? There's no incentive for me to tune in your station.
Okay, let's flip the script.
Please.
So you have, if you could sum up one incredible memory, what's been an incredible, awesome memory for you in this career?
I'll just go with the first job, because you never forget your first. But I think getting my first job out of college at American Top 40, which was a show I listened to, and I wrote down the list every single Sunday for a year. The fact that I was able to live my dream early in my career, I think that's probably the highlight. Was it necessarily the best job? Maybe not. But I mean, in the beginning, it absolutely was. Then it became corporate.
Right.
And then, you had to follow the corporate rules and all that. It wasn't a mom and pop company when I started. Although I still loved it. And I still am a fan of those shows that still air on your station, actually. Doesn't Cola play American Top 40?
Yep, we sure do.
And if you're doing the 80s ones, my name's probably in those credits.
Wow.
See how things come full circle?
Because Cola used to run the 70s, but I think that's just too old now.
Okay, it's got to be the 80s
for
sure. Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And so, so I did from 80 to 86, almost all those shows. So
how was Casey Kasem?
Nicest guy. I mean, I know a lot of people, heard that outtake.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he was yelling and screaming and he was always in a bad mood, but he really wasn't. Very professional. If you as a listener, and somehow you got his phone number and you called him, he would call you back.
Wow.
He after I had already left years later, and I think he was with Westwood One, or maybe Premiere, the show went back to Premiere.
That's how I felt about Rick Dees. He was such a nice guy. I mean, granted,
and everybody's going to have a bad day,
right?
Right. So that outtake, where he's talking about the dead dog, he was having a bad day. We were moving studios. He wasn't in his normal studio.
Oh, okay.
So that was different. The producer of American Top 40, a guy named Don Bastani, is Don on the phone, Don. Well, Don and Casey were college buds. They knew how to needle each other. Eventually, Don Bastani gets booted. He's not allowed in the studio, but he could listen in on the phone because he was always egging Casey on, and he was just slowing everything down. So something happened. He wasn't in his normal situation. He was coming out of Dare Me by the Pointer Sisters, the up-tempo number, and he had to transition to about a dog that had died in a long distance dedication. So how do you make a transition going, hey, Pointer Sisters, dare me. Now I want to talk to you about a dead dog. Like, how do you make that transition? So he was just frustrated. And that's what most people hear, is just his frustration.
Right.
And
everybody
you tell exactly.
I think everybody's allowed.
And you know what's funny about that outtake is that it was like, nobody ever thought about it that was there. You know, I had it. I have a clean copy, so you hear the feedback, and you hear, and you hear the whole thing. You hear the whole thing. The one that's out there was edited by somebody we both know.
Oh,
and that's how it got out. And I know the whole chain of how it got out and all of that.
Interesting.
But the thing was, we kept all these outtakes, but it wasn't until it went from the person that kind of gave it to somebody else who wrote for Night Court. Harry Anderson, who was the star of Night Court, got a hold of it, said, hey, this is pretty funny. He gives it to Howard Stern, who puts it on the air, and everybody hears this thing. But it was like just it was just like one of those outtakes that everybody keeps.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And he was just having a bad day. But a nice guy. Nice guy.
What was your take on Howard Stern?
You know what's funny? And this is the one time that I was 100% wrong about radio.
Okay.
So I might not have the right answers for the future of radio either. But back had to have been the 90s when Howard Stern was going to show up on KLSX Classics. Okay. But he was a New York guy.
Yeah.
He had his shtick.
Yeah.
Wasn't LA at all. No. That
Very
Howard Stern's coming out. And it's like, he doesn't sound like LA. Nobody's going to listen to him. Don't even worry about this guy. I was 100% wrong. I honestly thought because even when Cousin Brucey, who was like the DJ in New York, Cousin Brucey was so New York, and the way they wanted to produce was with that big New York echo behind the DJ, and something that LA never did. It was an East Coast thing. It's like
they would put a reverb or something on the
heavy reverb
on their voice.
On the voice, like so every time it sounded like they were in this cavern. Here comes Frankie Valli.
Wow.
You know, it was like I've got a ton of air checks. I will play for.
Wow.
We'll just sit and just listen to old time radio. How it used to be.
Yeah.
Totally. So they came out on WCBS. They were going to go up against K-Earth, and they were doing all these New York tricks that just did not work. It sounded nothing like LA. It was a huge failure. I was right about that one. But so Cousin Brucey was the guy that I worked with, and he's going, oh, Cousin Z. He had like this shtick. He was on Sirius XM up until recently. He's on WABC now in New York, and he's like 90 something. He's like the Art Laboe of New York kind.
Okay, got it.
But it just didn't work here. It's just like nobody understood the real Don Steele, who was my idol at KHJ.
He was on TV as well, right?
Yes, he had. No, Sam Riddle's 9th Street West. He had the real Don Steele show. Okay. And there's some film you can find and watch it. But he was like a screaming jock, and he was the guy I wanted to be. You know, it's 93 street level degrees at KHJ, you know. And it was like, that's the way to do it, man. He'd tell the weather and you were in on stuff. He was like the pre-JoJo. Like JoJo is that kind of personality too. Yeah. If you're not listening, you think you missed something.
You're right.
Because you missed JoJo.
Right.
If you missed the real Don Steele, you missed something after school or whatever. But he was like the guy. But nobody back east, Midwest, they don't get it.
Yeah.
And so there was so much regional radio and regional songs too. You know, for the 60s and 70s completely. Like if you listen to American Top 40 back then, the 70s, even the 80s to a degree. But you would always hear like maybe 5 or 6 songs you never heard on your local station. And that's what I loved about American Top 40. You heard the songs that were hits elsewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and so that local is just important, sounding like your city.
Yeah.
I like the local.
Yeah, just sound like the town you're in.
What about favorite studios you had? Because you've had quite a few great studios.
Yeah, okay, so as far as radio station looks, okay, I'm going to go like my favorite radio station to work at, not because it was the greatest experience of my life. Well, it might have been, but Mega 100.
Okay.
So you would think that I would say Kiss FM, would be my.
I don't think I've ever saw Mega 100. I don't think I saw that studio.
Okay. So
I saw the station, but I never saw your room.
Oh, okay, probably not. So it was built and we were out within a year.
Okay.
So they had all this brand new equipment, and it was beautiful. And I got to pick the speakers I wanted. I didn't have to get stuck with JBLs.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And it was just. But everybody at Mega 100, I hate JBLs. They sound so muddy to me. And speakers and headphones are 100% subjective. There is no right answer for headphones, no right answer for speakers. Whatever sounds good to you is the right one to get. But Mega 100, everybody got along. The GM, Marco Radlovic, was just a great GM. And I've had great GMs. Mark K at Kiss FM was a great one. And, but he would do things for the staff, little things. I think I touched upon it, last time was we had the 4:00 club every Friday before iHeart. And he would always bring in like some tequila. And if you smoked a cigar, you can go in his office and smoke a cigar. That wasn't for me. But the salespeople liked the production people, and the programming people liked the salespeople, and the general manager liked the underlings, and everybody liked everybody, and it was such a great experience. I probably have more friends from like a Kiss FM era or Mega 100 than I do from like Hot, than from Mega still. I mean, there's still people, but experience-wise and camaraderie and the beautifulfulness of the stations. There was a fish tank in the lobby.
Wow. All right. I had another question for you, and it slipped my mind because I was thinking about Mega. I guess that's it. Is there anything else that we need to talk about, Michelle? Is there anything? Oh, so it's so funny. They would DM me on Instagram, like in the last few weeks, and they would say, who's going to be on the podcast next week? And I said, well, Ron Shapiro. And they're like, oh, Ron's going to be there? Tell him I said hi. In fact, tell Ron that I've been trying to get a hold of him. And I'm like, oh, well, you just message him. They're like, oh, okay, great.
Who was it? Do you know?
I can tell you after when we stop recording. Yeah, I'll tell you after who.
Because I'll reach out.
Yeah. You're like, it's so funny. Every time I mention your name,
that's amazing to me.
Lights come up.
See, I never think anybody ever remembers me.
Oh, no.
Like if I'm in an event, I always introduce myself because I don't know. I'm like, I remember who you are, but I don't know that you remember me, and I don't want to put you in an awkward position.
Well, here's the thing. Our podcast, we just started, we're booked all the way to January.
Awesome.
Every week with a guest. But we wanted to make sure that you were one of the first ones.
Oh
we were excited to have you back.
Yeah, you're important to us.
But honestly, I wanted to show you the studio too. So
I know. Well, that was the whole thing. We were supposed to have dinner in studio, but we'll do dinner another time.
Let's do dinner soon, though. Can we do dinner like in the next couple of weeks? Okay, so, by the way, Ron and I find the coolest old school, old world restaurants that's like not a Dupar's, but more like a Sycamore Inn.
I like that.
Yeah, like for your birthday when we were there. Yeah. I had never been there. I love that place.
That place is awesome.
And I know the place that was diagonally across the street just reopened.
They just
Magic
reopened
Lamp.
it. We should do Magic Lamp.
Why don't we do that? But it's too late tonight. But why don't we do that at some point in the future?
Yeah, because I've never been there.
Yeah, let's do that.
Would be cool.
But I know we were going to go to Dan Tana's, which I've never been to.
Okay, why don't we do Dan Tana's first?
Okay. Yeah, you go traffic that way.
Yeah. You should join us, Dan Tana's in Hollywood. Okay. That'll be nice.
Yeah, because I've never been there, but we did not McCormick. We Moose on Frank's. We did that.
Frank. We do the greatest restaurants. It's so much fun. Ron, it's so much fun to just hang out. We just hang out. We just hang.
Yeah.
And talk.
Next time I'll bring like some air checks. We'll just sit around and just listen to how the videos used to be.
That will be awesome. Heck yeah.
All of them I have like unscoped, which means all the music's in it, all the commercials. So you are brought back to that time.
Yeah.
So, and I usually listen when I'm paying bills because I'm usually like really grumpy, but just hearing whatever station it was, even if it was just in the 80s, because that's old enough now, 40 something years ago.
You say you're grumpy when you do the bill. It's so funny because I remember when I was a kid and my mom, whenever she did bills, I had to stay away, a mile away. Like, don't
put on radio from her era. Put on radio from her era.
That's the bad part of your week.
That's funny. Wow, well, Ron, thank you so much for coming. Ron drove over an hour and a half to get here to the studio tonight.
And I would have done it even if it was 2 hours.
Ron, you know we absolutely love you, and it's a very special thing to have you down here in the studio in person live.
And congratulations. And I actually had something for you, and I left it right by the door. I realized halfway here that
Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Well, let's do Dantana soon. Let's get the time in and book it soon.
Okay.
What do you think of the studio?
I love it. I love it. It's like, man, I've been talking for a long time, I realized. Sorry. No, it's like, I'm so happy for you. This is just
Thank you.
So
It's really nice.
So beautiful. It sounds great. It looks great.
Well, thank you, because Ron's been in and worked in the greatest studios I've ever seen in my life, and for him to say that, that's
Good
pretty cool.
compliment.
I love it. I mean, you would never think this was in a house. This is like an office.
I have a mic processing thing. Can you help me with that later on?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. Well, Ron, before we close out the show, Ron, like we do with every guest here on the podcast, your top 5. And tonight, Ron, what top 5 are you doing?
I think maybe celebrities that I met or got to work with. Only one I met.
That's a good one because you met a lot.
Yeah. I don't have a top 5 of anything pretty much. Although I do have my top 5 songs, but I can't get to 10 because 6 through 10.
What is just one of those songs? Just so I know.
Okay, my number 1 favorite song of all time is This Boy by the Beatles.
This Boy by the Beatles. Okay.
I'll give you my top 5 songs, okay? So number 2 would be Whiter Shade of Pale by Procol Harum.
Yep.
3 is A Day in the Life by the Beatles. 4 is What the World Needs Now Is Love by Jackie DeShannon.
Okay.
And 5 is Rainy Night in Georgia by Brooke Benton. Have you heard of any of those songs?
Of course.
Yes.
I've heard of three out of the 5.
Okay.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the top 5 has not changed in maybe 10 years.
Well, it's so funny. The Beatles isn't old.
Yeah.
The Beatles category is the Beatles category.
Right.
Yeah, it's like its own category.
They had a new song this year, end of last year.
yeah.
Exactly.
But okay, so what was your original top 5?
Okay, the original, because I had to really think. So you suggested maybe celebrities that I either worked with or got to meet.
Yeah.
So as far as in radio, I think Casey Kasem would have to be number 1 because he was the guy, and of course Rick Dees, because I was a huge fan, and the fact I got to work with him for years and years. Smokey Robinson, because he did a night show at Mega 92.3.
Okay.
And the reason that I'll say that is because every night before the show, he was always at the vending machine. He got his bag of Cheez-Its. He loved Cheez-Its.
Me too.
Or he'd send out for a turkey fat burger, something like that. But we were just in the break room, and I said, "Hey, Smokey, I'm going to, we're playing one of my favorite songs that, nobody ever plays, but I'm really happy we're playing it on your show tonight. And it's I'll try something new." And he goes, "Ron, I wrote that song on a popcorn box with my dad at a baseball game. He liked Cleveland, I liked Detroit, but I had this idea and I just wrote it down on a popcorn box. Where in the world," and that's my Smokey impersonation, "where in the world would you be standing at a vending machine, Smokey getting Cheez-Its, and you get a story like that?"
Never. You would never get that.
So he's really nice.
So nice.
Awesome.
So, and the bigger the stars, the nicer they are.
I noticed
actually.
that. Yeah.
That's cool.
Stevie
Soulja
Wonder
Boy was not nice.
Your Soulja Boy is my Biz Marquee.
Oh, okay. So, did he dress nice when he would go to the station? I mean, Smokey Robinson?
Yes.
I could imagine.
Yeah, he will.
So last week, our guest, Jazzy K, met Babyface.
Yeah.
I've met him a couple times.
And she didn't know it was him.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
She was at his studio.
Do you want to tell the story?
Yeah, please.
I know. Well, that one's going to air before this one, so we can say it. She got invited to the studio. It was a little networking thing that she had met somebody that knew somebody that heard she was a singer.
So somebody liked her and wanted to bring her back to see Babyface's studio.
This is Kenny, and this is so-and-so, and this is Chris or something like that. And she's like, "Oh, nice to meet you all." And she starts like messing around and recording some stuff and doing all this stuff. And then later they said, "Oh yeah, when you met Babyface," she's like, "I didn't meet Babyface." And she's like, "That was just Kenny and Chris or something like that." And I was laughing so hard because I know who Kenny is.
Right.
And she said, "I didn't know that was him the whole time." And they were like, "You're adorable."
But see, that's, I think, what's really good. I have an embarrassing story. Is it okay if I keep?
Yeah,
sure.
Cut it all out. So getting back to Casey Kasem, one Christmas party was at Nick's Fish Market on Sunset Strip. And I'm sitting at this table with the person I work with, Anne, and her friend. How was I introduced to him? John.
Okay.
He's introduced as John. I said, hey, John, nice to talk to you. I'm talking like about an hour with this guy, just back and forth at the table. I'm there with my date, and we're just like, blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, John says something, and all of a sudden, the light bulb goes off on my head. I go, oh, my God, you're Johnny Hayes from KRLA. And I go, oh, shoot.
You were like fanboy.
It's like, I'm talking to this guy, and all of a sudden, I realize who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
And I feel so embarrassed. And to this day, I'm still embarrassed. And this was like 1980. So I'm holding this embarrassment for 44 years at this point. But so on Monday, I apologized. And I go, and I'm so sorry I geeked out. I don't get excited about meeting traditional celebrities. The radio people are who I get excited about.
Yeah.
So she says, you know what? He was having the worst day. He was so down about stuff. You made his day. Aww. You couldn't have done anything better. So she made me feel good about it.
Awesome.
But just the fact, like you said with Kenny, it's like, oh my God, I met Babyface. It's like, that was Kenny.
She said it was like the highlight of her life just to be in the studio and be invited there and go visit and all that. And then she thought, well, hopefully this will get to him. Or, hopefully somebody tells him. That was what she's probably thinking. And they're like, he introduced himself to you. He listened to you. He asked you to sing, and with no music, by the way. Remember she was saying, she just sang. Just like this with just a microphone. So he got to see her raw voice and liked it. So he was like, oh, maybe we can coordinate in the future and, all that stuff with things. So she's probably has some future works.
That reminds me, if she does a show here in LA, we'll let you know. So you can come see her perform live.
Love to.
Yeah, you'll come out and see her. She sounds great live.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love it.
Yeah.
I would love it.
Okay, so rest of the top 5?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So 1, 2, 3. I've already said 3. Oh, Paul McCartney. I had him in my studio.
Paul McCartney.
Yes.
What is that guy like?
It was all business. They had like security coming through. He was in, out.
Big time right there.
And the PD of KISS at the time put in front of him, how every artist does station liners or whatever. So the first liner, and this is before he actually went on the air. He was supposed to do the afternoon show with Magic Matt. Paul McCartney had a new album out. So I'll use his name. He's retired. Bill Richards. Not a favorite PD. But he puts the liners in front of Paul McCartney. The first one is an answering machine message. Hello, this is Paul McCartney. Bill Richards can't come to the phone right now. He'll be back. And he goes, I just did a bloody answering machine message. No, that's not cool, man. That's not cool. Gets up and starts walking out. He wasn't even going to do the afternoon show. Somehow everybody calmed him down and all this stuff. And he ended up doing the show. But I have that.
Did they do that to him as a joke?
No.
Or they really wanted a recorded message of him leaving it?
Yes.
I wouldn't like that either. I wouldn't like to be
So fast forward a few months, there's this comedy service or whatever, and Paul McCartney does like an answering machine message, like, for so-and-so's sex shop, or whatever. But he did it because he got like so flustered or pissed off or
got to make light of it somehow.
Whatever, yeah. So, so Paul McCartney stormed out of my studio. I have a picture of him storming out somewhere.
Wow. That's pretty funny.
But and I do have the audio from that. I still have, I think, that original session. So Paul McCartney, that actually probably was a highlight. And then at number 5, I'll just say we're going to clump them all together, all the KHJ DJs that I either got to work with or met years later, all the people that really influenced my whole upgrade.
Awesome.
So I'm just going to lump them all together.
Yeah.
Because Robert W. Morgan, who I worked with for years, he was not a nice man. So I can't say that I really liked working with him, but I grew up listening to him. Charlie Tuna, Mark Elliott, who, I've gotten to thank for taking the time to answer the phone when I called as a kid. And
that's cool.
And so that's why I'm saying like the connection. If somebody does call, so Mark Elliott, I know I've gone way over, just cut all this out. But so Mark Elliott was a DJ on KHJ. I noticed that when we were driving home from vacation from San Francisco, they were doing a Hall of Fame weekend. Every song is number 1. Get down to Fresno and Kino's doing the same thing. Then Caffey in Bakersfield and now KHJ is all this whole Labor Day weekend, this thing. And it dawns on me, all these stations are either owned by the same company or have the same consultant or whatever. Yeah. I don't know if I knew this because I was still really young at that point. But I called up KHJ, the request line, and Mark Elliott actually answered the phone because they had their own board up. So DJs didn't run their own board at that time. And he took the time. I said, hey, I noticed this. Do you have the addresses for all the other RKO stations that maybe did the Hall of Fame? And he goes, yeah, give me a second. He starts giving me the addresses and the names. He goes, hold on one second. I got to do this intro. He does the intro for the night they drove Old Dixie down by Joan Baez. I remember everything. Wow. That's how much this meant. And he finishes and he goes, I said, thank you so much, Mr. Mark Elliott. Bye-bye. Click. Fast forward years later, he fills in for Casey Kasem on American Top 40. I get to say, thank you, Mark. I know you will never remember this because it meant absolutely nothing to you. But the fact that you took the time, I always do that too. Same thing with Shotgun Tom Kelly.
That's cool.
I was a teenager, went with my friend, my first vacation without my parents, San Diego, went to the lobby of KCBQ to get on the list so they'd send me their top 30 list every week. And Shotgun Tom comes out. He goes, hey, you guys are from LA? I go, yeah. Hey, come on back. You want to see the studio? Yes, sure. Yes, sir, Mr. Shotgun. Blah, blah. And he took like an hour and just talked to me and my friend.
Wow.
Fast forward, he's a good friend now because I always pay it forward. Anybody that ever came into the radio station or even Spotify, if somebody else wasn't for the tour, call. I don't care what I'm doing. I will give somebody a tour. I've got a lifelong friend from one of those tours.
See, so for Michelle Zuno, it's Ashley Flowers. So if she's ever in the...
If she's ever back here, she hangs out in Indiana
I was on another
mostly.
podcast. Yeah, that's where she's from.
Yeah.
And that's probably why she's super personable to and likable, because she's from a really small town in Indiana.
Yeah.
She always says no one knows anything about Indiana. Nobody comes to Indiana. It's like a very small little... And she's made herself such a huge voice coming from a small town that she's a pay-it-forward person. On her Instagram the other day... She had a political post, but nothing streamed to any political person. She was dressed in all red coat from all the way down past her knees. She looked super sharp, and it said, I always think it's important to vote as a woman, this and this and that. Just voting and being strong and empowered or something like that. And then she said, please tell me any of you that are struggling or need help with a bill today. Let me know what bill that you need help with, and I'm going to pay a few people's bills. Leave your Venmo handle. And she pays tons of people, at least 50.
Wow.
Even if it's $20, you tell her,
God.
I just need gas money. She Venmos you.
How much money is she making?
And she's
Sirius XM paid her.
She's so generous. And to me, that's what I would do. Like if people are looking up to me, little girls are looking up to me on my Instagram, and she's talking about go vote and make your voice heard and be powerful because you can do it, because I was able to do it coming from the small town. And she pays it forward every time.
That reminds me of Mr. Beast, the guy from YouTube. Who
Mr. Beast
walks around and, flashes his money.
I love that guy.
He goes and helps a small little village, in the middle of Mexico.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
He does
I don't know if I would
contests.
offer him money because I think now it's like winning the lottery. Everybody's coming out of the
He does
woodwork.
suitcases of money.
Wow.
Well, Ron, where did we leave off with Ron? Was that it?
I think that was all five. I lumped all the KHJ
Yeah,
boss
he was
trucks.
just adding some more cool people that he got to experience.
Ron Shapiro, who lives in the beautiful part of Pasadena, Eagle Rock, drove all the way down to the boonies of city of Montclair. And you made it here, and we had a killer show. We did really good. So
we really appreciate.
I hope I didn't talk too long.
No, we want people to talk longer than shorter for sure.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, second time on the podcast, Ron Shapiro.
Thanks for coming back.
Thank you both.
All right.
All right.
Perfect.
Do you have any hard drive left now after all that?